Hello Taurus friends, I'm Annie Botticelli and welcome to my video, Taurus January 2021 Astrology Must Knows. Welcome to some of the most open stars than we've had for a long time, than we will even have for a long time, as almost every planet and asteroid is moving direct. All the planets that we typically look at in Western astrology will be moving direct in the first half of January, and all of the star goddess asteroids also will be there. So these open stars for making decisions, for making up for lost time, for breaking out of stagnation, continue. We've had those stars since the end of November when that's when that started to crack open and momentum started to come back, and December was likely very different than the rest of the year had been before. Now, in many ways, there are certain things that are still a carryover that are still kind of getting resolved, but from the starry energies and the opening up and the forward movement, this is something that has not been the theme of 2020 for sure. But here we're starting 2021, brand new year, brand new energy. Some years don't feel like a new year when we start in January, depending on what's going on in the stars, but this is one of those years that you really will feel it. Massive amounts of karma will have burnt off, and there are going to be many clean slates offered to you at the beginning of this year. The first half of January is very different than the second half of January because these open stars that I'm raving about that are perfect for your business launches, for your big decisions, for your contracts, for any major, moves and just anything that's big, and doing something with the eclipse news that came in, then that starts to shift in the middle of January as we start to slide towards Mercury retrograde, which starts at the end of the month and dominates February. So they're very different in that way because we're just racing forward in the first half. In the second half, we're slowing it down. Okay, so now we're going to go back internal, take a break from all of the hectic activity, go back to unfinished business, things that have been neglected because we've been focusing on all these, other things moving forward. Just very much going back kind of closer to ourselves, like within ourselves and our immediate environment. So that's a big must know. Something else that is a definite must know is that even though the stars are wide open the first half of January, there is a caveat to this kind of just like, do it all, do it now. Because this square that we have with Jupiter and Uranus, and I'm going to go into a lot of detail about this after the rest of the report, towards the end of the video, because it's a transit that is worth some time because it's rare and it's going to have global effects drilled down to the individual effects, and there are a lot of them. But a couple of pieces here while we're on the topic of the open stars and making decisions is that Jupiter squaring Uranus can lend itself towards rebellious excess and extravagance and extreme zealotry. And it's not always well indicated, okay? So you might have a compulsion to just maybe you start out cleaning your house and you're like, okay, now I'm going to move into a tiny home instead. And that wasn't my intention at the beginning of the month or whatever. It's like things can get carried away and can lend themselves to excess that someone might regret. Now, I'm not saying that there aren't going to be epic changes that happen this month that will turn out to be good and fine, because there will be. Change is coming and there's nothing that we can do about it. We can have as much as resistance, or not to it, but what's more likely is change might come too fast and it might be dizzying, and that's another effect of the transit. But just kind of remember I said this. If you feel like you're kind of on a high and you're like, I'm making all these changes, and just don't throw the baby out with the bathwater, okay? That's a big must know. Okay, so more eclipse news and events are going to come in, plus we have other transits this month that lend themselves to information coming in, very powerful information coming in. So even if you've been rocked by news that's already come in from the eclipses, you're going to have more news, and some of it can be new and different, but some of it can be along the same lines of the storylines that were brought up by the eclipses. If you want to understand the eclipses that are at play for each Taurus placement, I go into lots of detail with resources that I've created for you. So watch my November report for Taurus, watch my December report for Taurus. I'll give you some details there, and I'll refer you to even more resources that I created to really drill down to see how this eclipse story is going to affect you, because eclipses as astronomical events are at the moment they're happening. Eclipses as astrological events take place over cycles, and this cycle started earlier in 2020, like even March of 2020, we really started seeing what the eclipses of the summer and the winter for you all down under, what those eclipses in the middle of 2020 started to introduce new themes globally and to us individually. And those themes are going to be very strong in the forefront through the beginning of 2022. A lot of that has to do globally with education and information sharing and what that's going to look like as far as, you know, how people are work, commuting, transportation, what that's looking like, and their regular job experiences. But there are some things specific for you, so watch those reports for that. But in any case, what you need to know now is you're not done with the news yet, okay? There are definitely more epic, life-changing possibilities coming this month, and it's a time for great change. And there are also a lot of clashes this month between Jupiter and Mars and Saturn and the planet Uranus, and then the Sun and Mercury also clashing with some of these. So there are going to be points of tension this month, and there is going to be a massive amount of anxiety. I warned you about this in October into November, that this was going to happen, and looking back now, you can see what I was talking about. There was just a massive amount of anxiety and uncertainty. The world started closing down again, the election in the United States, like all the stuff that I told you about in the months before October and November, you came to understand what that looked like. And now I'm telling you this again. This period of time is going to feel like you have your finger stuck in an electric socket. Okay, but it doesn't have to be terrible. It just is what it is, and it can be purposeful. Whenever we have difficult aspects in the stars, I always think about it as like cleaning out something that has nooks and crannies. Like sometimes for certain devices that you might have, or like a juicer or something like that, have little corners and grooves that get stuff stuck in them. Maybe, like me, you might use a Q-tip to try to get in there and like get all that gunk out of there to make it really, really clean. And this is what the universe is doing to us. It's not trying to torture us. I believe there's an infinite, benevolent creatrix that's running the show here. And even though things seem difficult and we get very emotional about them because humans are sentient beings, we are feeling beings, and we're not just always going to feel in the high yay zone, right? We're here to experience a broad range of feelings, emotions, and these are very often triggered by astrological transits. And that's going to be happening this month, okay? But there's lots to celebrate still, and specifically for Taurus, there are a lot of things to celebrate. So just big must know, just try to avoid overdoing, overcommitting, overpromising, overextending, and just like have reserved enthusiasm if something seems like it's going to come in and solve all your problems, or that there's a be-all, end-all. Just kind of take it with a grain of salt, but you're good at that already, right? Taurus energies always have this reserved enthusiasm, unless you have, just a little bit of Taurus and an excess of something else that doesn't tend to have that. In general, you are one of the signs that will have an easier time looking suspiciously at things that may come in to make sure that it makes sense to go all in. Okay, so now I have a list of Taurus January 2021 must-knows that are very specific for you. The first is that all of you, early, middle, and late degree placements, are going to get Sun, Mercury, and Venus kisses. Now, it is also important to mention that this video is for you. If your Sun is in Taurus, your Moon is in Taurus, your Mercury is in Taurus, your Venus is in Taurus, your rising signs in Taurus, any Taurus placement you have that you watch for, this Taurus report is a piece of your personal astrological picture. Our personal astrological picture is way more complex than just what our sun sign perspective is doing. And so regardless of your Taurus placement, this is for you, okay? The second thing is that if you're a late degree Taurus, or you're born later in the sign, so that's basically like April 11th through the rest of the sign, or 20 to 29 degrees, and the later in degree and the later in April you get, the more this is true. I highly recommend you also watch my Gemini reports, because you cuspy people, I'm a cuspy person too. My moon's on the cusp, my sun's on the cusp. That's how I figured this out for myself when I'd start, watching reports, and I'm like, hey, wait a minute, those things that they're talking about, they're not happening for me right now. But weeks in, or in some cases for outer planets, years in, I start feeling that, and I'm like, why? Right? Because I'm a late degree placement. I figured that out. That's why I mention it to you all, because a third of you out there might be in that situation. So your reading is more complex, and it would help you to watch the Taurus and the Gemini reports. Okay, so these Sun, Mercury, and Venus kisses. We are going to have every personal planet move through an earth sign this month. And that's good news for Taurus because this is a language that you understand. If you just imagine that these elements are languages, and the language of practicality, the language of productivity, the language of reason, are all things that earth energies they understand each other. So when you have the planets moving through an element that is your element, then it's speaking your language and you get it and you feel it, and it's they're kisses, okay? So the Sun and Mercury and Venus are going to give you those kisses, and that's going to be all of you. All of you are going to get kisses from these placements. The Sun will help you to have creativity and insights and ideas, and Mercury will bring you information and assistance to figure out solutions. And Venus kisses can come in the form of self-esteem boosts or romantic positive things or something gelling for your finances. So that's what those kisses can look like, and you've all got them coming. Every early, middle, and late degree placement have them coming now. Okay, so the second must know for Taurus for January 2021 is that Mars is moving into your sign. Okay, this is rare that this happens. It's not your everyday experience. We've just experienced Mars in Aries from August through now, January, basically. And that was an extra time. Usually Mars stays in a sign about 10-ish weeks. So you'd have to have 12 cycles of 10 or 11 cycles of 10 weeks before you would get Mars back in your sign, basically. But when Mars goes retrograde in a sign, it spends a long time there. And that sign that Mars was in from August-ish until January was not super easy or comfortable or a language that you really speak. And it was very likely messing with your mind. If you are a Taurus, that's usually stable. Okay, Taurus is what is one of the key words we think of when we think of Taurus. Stable, stability, someone that's trustworthy, someone that if they say they're going to do something, they're going to do it, right? And they also are often the glue that hold all the other wild, signs together. But when you've been having Mars move through your 12th house for this very extended period of time, it can make you feel like you're completely losing your marbles. So if you're a Taurus that has been experiencing that and you're like, oh my gosh, what is happening here? That's why, because usually you would only experience that for around 10 weeks. It would happen. You're like, oh God, I'm all whacked out. Okay, but it's only a couple months and it passes. It didn't pass. It didn't pass for a long time, but now it's going to pass. So that is something to celebrate, and that's definitely really good news. And now that Mars is going to move through your sign, it's going to cross over every Taurus placement. So between January, like a little bit in, like a week or 10 days in, through like the first weekish or so of March, it's going to move through Taurus. So in that period of time, it's going to cross over every single one of your Taurus placements. So again, as usual, the earlier degrees, you're going to feel that in January more. So the May-born Tauruses, you might take a little bit more into February and March to really feel what I'm about to talk about. But you might start feeling the whispers of it, which is this: mega ambition and mega productivity. Okay, because Mars lights a fire under your butt. And when it's in an earth sign, it wants to take ideas and make them tangible. And when it crosses over your particular placement, it adds fuel to whatever placement is there. Now, it can add aggression, it can add frustration, and it can add its warlike tendency. Okay, so that can come up and it can cause some conflicts and some arguments. And you might notice that you have some conflicts with some people close to you during this time. And this can be about you asserting a boundary, or this can be about you resisting a change that's coming, or this can be about someone close to you resisting a change or resisting something that you're trying to do. The energy of resistance can often come up with this type of angle and expression, and your partnerships will be focused on. One of the best ways to use the energy is to get in your physical body in the best shape possible for your vibrant health. If you've had a health issue, if you're not in a good exercise routine, if you've got stress management issues, if you need to take more supplements, if you need your diagnostics for medical stuff, This is all a great time when Mars is doing this thing. But also the first half of January is good for that, because when you have to get medical exams, usually, I mean, again, if you are in an emergency situation, don't worry about whether something's retrograde. You have to get the things that you need at that time. But if you're planning them, I like to avoid medical exams when possible during retrogrades, because they have a tendency to not be accurate or later be, just there's confusion around them. But the first half of January, you still have this energy in Taurus, either in or about to be in, and you've got all the open stars for doing things for your physical body. If you have to join a gym, whatever that looks like, if it's virtual or if we're back in the gyms, then anything that's a commitment to your physicality is definitely something that really wants to be addressed. And if there's an addiction, like a sugar addiction or a food addiction or something going on there, this energy can really give you motivation to take the steps that are necessary to overcome this. So that's very exciting. Okay, so as the planets move through the earth signs, they're going to push through and get over to Aquarius, which is an air sign. This aspect is not the best angle for you, so you're going to feel some annoyance and nuisance from this. Now, you don't worry though, because I just told you about all this other sweet stuff going on, so that can be a counterbalance. But you will be feeling this, and I think that it's going to come for many of you in the form of new perspectives being forced upon you. So, you're doing things in this way, they've been working, I'm going to do it in this way, this has worked for 30 years, whatever, or however long, and now things are coming in globally, or things are coming in your relationship, or things are coming in your business, where you're like, okay, you're faced with the realization that what you did before is actually not going to work anymore, and now you have to do something different. And that awkwardness of the transition of setting a new system is not something that Taurus energies love, unless you have like other placements in something else that offset this. In general, Taurus energies like the routine, they like the way they're doing it, they have a fixed way of doing things that work, so they don't want it to be questioned because the proof is in the pudding, right? But that's also going to work the other way now, where it's going to become very clear that there are certain ways you're going to have to change how you're looking at things and change how you're directing your energies in order to move with the times and move with the opportunities. But this can create a massive amount of new industry, and Taurus people can be leaders in this, because who knows how to build a business like a Taurus or other earth sign, right? I mean, this is like your domain, and there's going to be high unemployment, and there's maybe a recession, and there's going to be the financial picture, at least in the United States for sure, and possibly in other places. I'm not as familiar with their markets, but this is going to, things are ending. Things are ending the way we've done work, and your work may be really changing. So just try to embrace this journey with the spirit of a great adventurer. Like, what's next? What can I do now instead? What's up at the next peak? Rather than like being comfortable with the plains and seeing everything ahead of you clearly. Okay, there's definitely going to be some embracing and forcing of new perspectives, but if you just ignite your creativity and apply your wherewithal, you can really recreate your life, and you can also help employ other people. Okay, so something else that is a must-know for Taurus for January 2021 is if you're in an early degree. Okay, so this is basically April-born people, but those of you who are like around the 28th, we'll say like the 23rd through the first couple of days in May, but the closer to around April 28th, or the closer to 6 degrees, if you know your Taurus placement for something else, expect excess and extra disruptions. Disruption is a word that everybody is going to have as a keynote at this time, partly because all of these aspects with Uranus. Now, just to kind of put this in perspective again, Uranus is the energy of disruptions, of things that come out of the blue, of shock and awe. And Uranus rules the sign of Aquarius. Jupiter's moving into the sign of Aquarius. Saturn's moving into the sign of Aquarius. We have personal planets in the short-term way moving into the sign of Aquarius. So the energy of disruption is coming. And that can be a good thing. That can be like, wow, this is the status quo. This is bad. Now we're going to come in and disrupt this. So disruptions are coming. But if you're in that period of time, the 28th, or near 6 degrees, and the surrounding areas, that's why I listed like kind of like a web of the time of like around the 23rd to the beginning of May. You're likely to have more disruptions because there is a massive amount of disruptive activity at 6 degrees in the sky. Okay, these numbers are mathematical keys that lock things into people. And if anyone that has 6 degree angles are going, and the United States actually at the birth of the United States has a 6 degree important 6 degree angles, which is part of why things are getting disrupted so strongly in the United States, is because the birth chart of the United States has this angle and as very prominent. And so as these aspects are going to be occurring, not just this month, but moving forward, it's disrupting. That's just the best I can say. And you're going to feel it even more if you're in that period of time. Okay, so couple of other must-knows for Taurus for January 2021. Who do you need to forgive? South Node is transiting in your 8th house. South Node is showing us points of karma that want to be cleared out. And when we clear that out, we get gifts. And the 8th house is about a lot of different things, but what I'm called to discuss, the aspect I'm called to discuss about at this time for you, is this topic of forgiveness. And who do you need to forgive? Because that's just the feeling that I get as I'm looking at what's going on in your 8th house. It just feels like you're holding on to something. And some famous words by a Taurus might say, I'll forgive, but I'll never forget. Although some of you will just straight up say, I'm not going to forgive either. But that not forgetting piece, there's something in your body, there's something in your being, there's something that has to be cleared out and forgiven in order for your finances, your relationships, the other thing, your vitality, in some cases your health, to really start flowing the way that you want it to. Okay, so just feel into that question. The last piece that I want to talk about as a must-know for Taurus for January is full moon drama. Okay, so around the 28th, we're going to have, well, on the 28th, but in the days around it, because sometimes it's days before and after that we experience this full moon energy. The full moons always bring, the potential for high emotion and drama. They can also bring fulfillment, fruition, things coming through in a big way. And it could just be things coming to a head or coming to light. But because this angle is at a difficult one for Taurus placements, I think you're going to experience this in a more noteworthy way. So I wanted to call it out. If you have any scheduling, say, leave a little space around the days around the 28th so that you can deal with things that come up. There's nothing worse than having things come up and you having a full schedule and not even be able to deal with them. Now, I know Taurus energies are very capable of, just reserving your emotions and dealing with what has to be dealt with. But since you're going to know this is coming up, something's going to happen here. It doesn't have to be a terrible thing. You don't have to fear it, but there's going to be some drama. Maybe it could be a good thing. Maybe it can be something that just is so wonderful, but it's making you more tired because you have to show up for it. Or, it doesn't have to be a bad thing, but it is going to be an intense thing. And it is going to affect all Tauruses. And, but again, we're kind of honing in on at the end of April and the beginning of May. For you all, that's going to be even more intense. So those of you in that framework, and this time it's 9 degrees. Okay, so the closer to 9 degrees, the more intense it's going to be. You all are really undergoing some massive transformation. And just kind of a heads up, the next eclipse cycle that we're going to have that's going to start rolling in towards the end of the year is the Taurus-Scorpio eclipse cycle. Okay, so where these points here are like bringing us into this period of time where Taurus energies are going to be experiencing very, very radical change. And that's going to continue as the year moves on and then as we get into that eclipse cycle. But for those of you, especially in that time frame, or if you have planets near those degrees, you're really going to feel that. And if you want to know more about your birth chart, just search for how to run a free birth chart online. Then you can see if you have any other Taurus placements You can see if you have more than one. Then when I give you this information, you can be like, oh, well, okay, so my Venus is also in Taurus, and that's at 6 degrees. And wow, my Sun is at a late degree. So I wouldn't have even been paying attention at this point when Annie was talking about this, because I thought I was later in there and it didn't matter for me. It could very well matter for you. And if you just do a little bit of work, you can use the information that I'm giving you in much greater ways. So overall, the stars are definitely more on your side because of the things that I talked about. You're going to have a lot of special points there, and you're going to have opportunities to change. And the more you can greet that with, a grateful alacrity, the more you can experience the good of this month, and the more you can just use any conflict or drama in the world or in your life to trigger your resourcefulness and kind of like send a little note in your brain. Annie said, remember to trigger your resourcefulness, right? So like if things start happening, just remember you can handle this, you can do this, and the ideas that you have might not only help you, but they can help many other people, and they can actually free you from some shackles that you've kept yourself in, or that these karmic cycles have been holding you in. So it's definitely a chance for you to emerge feeling more light and shiny and refreshed on the other side of just kind of pushing through the transition. Okay, so let's get down into the nitty-gritty of understanding this Jupiter square Uranus aspect. Unlike the upcoming in February Saturn square Uranus aspect, we're only going to have one of these Jupiter-Uranus aspects this year. The Saturn one will have 3 times, and we'll talk about that more next month. That's going to be a very big deal too. But it's important to understand, like, there are must-knows about this transit, because it is a biggie. Whenever the outer planets come in close connection, or exact connection in this case, it definitely brings notable things globally down to the individual level, okay? So the first must know here is that you will feel very anxious, okay? The energy of Uranus really rules like the nervous system in some ways. So it's like when there's an aspect with Uranus, we often feel like our fingers stuck in an electric socket. And so the anxiety levels run super high, and those are going to have to be managed. So you just need to know that going into this month, even though we've already had, a long series of that going on, this month is going to be like that as well, okay? The second thing is that even though, as I mentioned earlier, since all the planets are moving forward, it is a good time to move forward and to make decisions and to do important things, especially in the first half of January before Mercury starts to slide into its retrograde process. But there's a caution here with the Jupiter square Uranus, because people can feel really, really, really compelled to do crazy things. And some of those, if there's like a calculated risk involved, could turn out really well. But there could be an interference with the discernment process of figuring out what those things are. So like extravagance, erratic behavior, because Jupiter rules excess. So like big purchases, big commitments, big, trying to cut something off, or big decisions about like kind of making a clean slate, a clean cut, and then moving forward, like trying to cut ties completely. There is some caution with that. So even though the stars are moving forward and it is good to make these big decisions in some ways, if you can leave your lifeline intact, if you can leave an option, for holding on to some of the old stuff until you can see how the new stuff shakes out, because you might wish you had some of that stuff to go back to, that's a very, very major must know for this aspect. If you've got that option to like wait a little bit until the tensions aren't as high, wait a little bit to see if you can find a bridge option that includes both of the things that might be in question. It's just can be a little bit sketchy making a clean cut at this time with this aspect. People are also very, receptive to other people's intentions. So whether it's on your personal level with somebody close to you, or whether it's in a level of like a leader or a religious leader or a political leader trying to exert or say things, People are going to be very open to suggestion at this time with this aspect. And actually, there are cult leaders, known cult leaders, that have had this aspect in their natal charts, like the capacity to woo somebody over into something that seems so exciting, like it's going to solve all the problems. Just be very wary of anyone or anything that says, now all your problems are going to be gone if you do this thing. Unless it's something that's low stakes, low commitment, has protections in order, isn't like one of those big, clean cut where you're just like completely separating. If it's something that seems reasonable, and maybe you might not even know if it's reasonable. That's the difficulty. I would say have like people that you trust to cross-reference before you do anything crazy with this aspect, okay? So, let me see what else I wanted to tell you about this. So the energy of rebellion is going to be very strong because of the planet Uranus ruling Aquarius, and now Jupiter's in Aquarius and Saturn's in Aquarius, and then we've got these aspects with Uranus, which rules Aquarius, so it's like, the energy of like being a rebel, breaking free is going to be very strong, and you will be able. That's one of the very plus sides of this aspect, even though it is a challenging aspect, we could call it, it's a point of tension. You can break free of things that were shackling you. But the more you direct the breaking of the shackles to things like clearing up addictions, clearing up debt, clearing up, overspending, like clearing up bad habits, the more you can be more sure that it's going to be a good thing what you think that you are breaking free from, okay? Because breaking free for the sake of itself might seem very alluring at this time, and people could make some rash decisions that they later regret. So a lot of caution and care has to be given. Okay, let me see if there's anything else. Yeah, so there, along with this can also come like impatience, because you're wanting to make it happen, and, towards the middle of the month, then things might start slowing down again, or, here I'm telling you, like, take a little caution when you move forward. So there could be some of this like frustration with not feeling clear about something. But if you don't feel super clear about something, then definitely I would suggest waiting it out a little longer. The energies will be much more clear in March and April for trying to make some big decisions again, in the event that you're not completely clear at this time. Some other things about Jupiter squaring Uranus are, first of all, that it may coincide with major trajectory changes. And this is an interesting topic now because we've just come out of eclipse season, and we're still kind of getting some leftover things from the November, December eclipses, which definitely are trajectory changing and can really set people on a completely different course. And this aspect does the same thing. So it's very kind of eclipse reminder like in that way, where it's, you could see something come, and if it's coming out of your control and you can't do anything about it, then your choice is to clear up the resistance and accept it, or look for possible solutions or ways around it. And if those can't be found, then, to try to regain your peace on the topic. But it does often coincide with very dramatic life changes, and also changes in fortune. So people may make a bunch of money and all of a sudden be rich. People may lose a bunch of money and all of a sudden, have a reversal of their financial situation. So those types of things can happen. An analogy that I've been thinking of for this aspect has to do with those stories we hear about certain people who have become famous too fast, or become famous too young, or become successful too young or too fast, or just too plain successful and famous, right? Sometimes, and I'm not saying that this is true for all people who are successful or famous, obviously, but there are many people we've heard of that have just not been able to handle that level of change and that extreme change, or that extreme experience, and it has burnt them up. And this energy is very much like that. So many people might be thrown into the spotlight, thrown into fame, thrown into fortune, or thrown into not fortune, just like a big change. But a lot of it can be very positive, like you get your dream that you worked for, but you need some help and support managing the openness that comes with it. Sometimes this aspect can bring too much freedom and too many options, and the confusion that comes from those things, So definitely if you're in a position like this where something like this occurs, remember what I said so that you can seek out support to help you stay grounded and help you stay centered and help you make good choices during the major changes, because zealotry is another word that I'm using to describe what this energy can bring. And even though the aspect is happening on the 17th of January, this is a big one. So we're feeling this, even a month or more before it's starting to build, and we'll feel it after. It'll flow after. It's like, it's a big one. We're not going to feel it just on the day and the week of this. This is a trend that's kind of building in our subconscious. It's making itself more external the closer we get to the middle of January, and then it's present all through January. Really, this is strong, and then it will start to fade out into February and into the beginning of March. Then that cycle will be complete with this particular aspect, but it is much more longer lived, and it can create very permanent effects as well, depending on the decisions made. So just be excited if your life is expanding in wonderful ways, but just keep your center and be very cautious with the decisions that you make, understanding all of these pieces now. Okay, so I know I've given you a lot to digest here. If you would like to have even more information on how you can understand and utilize the energies at play from the planetary perspective, then go to anniehelpsyou.com. There you'll see lots of blogs that I've written on astrology and other topics, but there you can also sign up for my free email newsletter. And with that, you will get delivered into your inbox 1 month early my written report of the sweet and salty aspects and their dates and what you can expect from them, as well as my general write-up of the month in a written version so that you can go back over it and digest it. So it's not a transcript of these videos, but it is a summary and some more details about the general energies at play. Okay, so you can get that at anniehelpsyou.com, and you'll also receive my 28-day virtual coaching program called Shine for free as a member of my email community. Okay, so all that's at anniehelpsyou.com. Then you can go to cozybysweetstarlight.com, and you'll see my written horoscopes up 1 month early, as well as book recommendations for each sign for each month, depending on the sun, where the sun is for each sign, plus healthy lifestyle and spiritual lifestyle blogs on there. It's a beautiful site. You will love it. So you can check that out, cozybysweetstarlight.com. Definitely also go to my school, Luminous Life Multiversity, at lumelife.com, LUME life.com. I've got free courses there on health and wellness, also on increasing your abundance. You can see those free courses, and you can see my paid course called Becoming a Professional Astrologer Mastery Course. If you think I put a lot into the free resources that I give you every month, you should see what I do for the paid resources. It is quite crazy comprehensive, and it will equip you to do whatever you'd like to do in astrology, whether it's just for your own self-development and helping your family and friends, or if you'd like to include it in part of a professional offering, or just do astrology as your work. I will teach you what you need to know to do that. So you can see all of that there. And very exciting, it's definitely time to get my book, Planetology, How to Align with the Natural Rhythms of the Universe. It's out officially on December 8th of 2020. You can pre-order it before then, and you can find it on Audible. It's on Kindle. It's in a print version. It's on Barnes & Noble Nook. It's a beautiful hardcover reference book that you'll go back to time and time again. All of the Books A Million stores and all of the Barnes & Noble stores in the entire US has ordered copies of this book. So you should be able to walk in and get it unless somebody's bought them already. But you can also order them on Amazon and at independent booksellers, many independent booksellers worldwide, and also some big booksellers worldwide have also stocked this book. So you can find it pretty much anywhere. So you can see that, more of that, by just searching for Planetology in my name. And I hope you have a wonderful month. Happy New Year, and I'll see you next month. Bye.